Welcome to the deep dive. I think if you're learning a language, you know this feeling. I mean, you know it intimately.
Oh, absolutely. It's probably the most universal frustration there is.
You've spent, what, hours and hours on grammar rules, right? You've got the flashcards memorized.
Memorized until your eyes are blurry, you can pass the written test, no problem.
Exactly. You get an A+ on the exam, but then it's time to actually speak, to have a real conversation.
And everything just freezes. It's like
Yeah.
the system crashes.
That's it. That's the feeling. You understand what they're saying to you perfectly, but your tongue feels like lead. The words just won't come out.
It's this crushing sense of,
Ah.
of having all the data, but you can't run the program. And that gap, that we're talking about today, it exists for a reason.
A very specific reason.
It's because the way we were often taught, the traditional classroom methods,
Hmm.
they just don't match how the brain really learns a language, how it grows one organically.
Right, and fixing that gap, or at least understanding it, that's the whole goal of this deep dive. We're going to pull back the curtain on that internal process. And for that, our main source, our guide really, is the groundbreaking work of Nanina Spada and Petty Lightbound in their book, How Languages Are Learned.
Which is really a kind of an operating manual for the brain's language system. We're not just going to list rules today. We're going to try and dissect the actual mechanisms.
Because if you understand those, a lot of the frustration just melts away.
It does. Our mission here is to uncover the processes that lead to real natural growth. Something completely separate from the pressure of passing a test or, speaking perfectly on day one.
We're looking past the memorization myth, so where do we start? The book lays out one foundational concept that really it changes everything.
It has to begin with input.
Okay, let's unpack this. So we're starting with what the authors say is the absolute core of the entire process, the essential building block, and that is input. So input, it sounds a bit academic, a little technical, but the idea behind it is actually incredibly simple, isn't it?
It really is. At its most basic, input is just the language you receive, the language that comes into your brain.
Through your ears or your eyes.
Exactly. If you're listening to a conversation or a song or, well, this deep dive right now, that's auditory input.
And if you're reading a book or an email or even just a street sign in English, that's the visual input.
It's the raw material, the fundamental ingredient that your internal system needs to be able to do anything at all.
And the authors use this brilliant analogy that makes it so clear. They compare language input to food.
Yes. And it's a powerful comparison because it's not just a nice metaphor. It really captures the biological necessity of it.
What do we mean by necessity?
Well, think about your body.
Yeah.
If you don't give it food, what happens? It gets weak, it can't function, it certainly can't grow.
Right? It starts to break down.
The same exact rule applies to the language center of your brain.
Mm-hmm.
If it doesn't get that language food, the input it cannot learn. It's not that it will learn slowly. It won't learn at all.
I think that's where so many of us go wrong. We
Yeah.
focus on the cooking, right? The grammar rules, the verb tables.
The fancy recipes.
Yeah. But we forget to even buy the groceries. We forgot to supply the basic raw ingredients.
And that's why the book makes such a strong claim. It's not a suggestion, it's an absolute. They say it is impossible to learn a language without input.
Impossible. That's a strong word.
It is, but think about it. You could spend years memorizing every rule in a grammar book. You could memorize a dictionary of 10,000 words.
Oh, okay.
But if you never hear or read that language being used in a real context, your brain has nothing to process. That knowledge just sits there. It's inert.
No, it's knowledge about the language, but it's not the language itself.
Precisely. It's like you have the blueprint for a car engine. You know every part by name, but you've never been given any of the actual metal or wires to build it. You can't build the engine from the blueprint alone.
And this just completely flips the script on how most people approach learning. We spend, 80% of our time trying to produce language, trying to speak, and maybe 20% just absorbing it.
And for real growth, that ratio has to be reversed,
Yeah.
which of course directly challenges that primary anxiety that every learner feels.
Oh, the desire to speak right away.
Yes, that intense pressure. People feel that if they aren't talking, they're failing, they're wasting time. They want the output now.
But Spada and Lightbound, they just completely dismantle that idea. They say there's a crucial, unavoidable order to this.
An order that mirrors how every single one of us learned our first language. Speaking is not first. It can't be.
Listening and reading come first.
Always. Massive amounts of listening and reading. Speaking is a result of all that absorption. It's not the thing you do to start the process.
The book uses another great analogy here, an architectural one. If we think of speaking as the finished house, the structure we want to live in,
Then input is the foundation.
the deep, concrete base.
And you just can't build a stable house on a weak foundation. If you try to force speaking before you have that robust base of input,
Mm-hmm.
well, your linguistic house is shaky.
It collapses under the first bit of pressure.
Exactly. You struggle for words. You can't form sentences because you're asking a system to perform a task it hasn't been built for yet. It hasn't been fed enough.
What about the traditional way? You know, you learn a rule, like a verb conjugation, and you immediately do exercises to practice it. That feels like it works, right?
Right.
At least for passing the test next week.
It works for passing the test, but it's psychologically misleading. Knowing the rule consciously gives you this false sense of fluency.
A false sense of readiness.
Yes, you can ace the multiple choice question, but in a real spontaneous conversation, your conscious mind can't access and apply that rule fast enough. It's stored in the wrong part of the brain for that kind of automatic real-time use.
So the big takeaway here is really a mental shift. We need to have patience and prioritize the so-called passive skills.
But they aren't passive at all. Listening and reading are the active work of building that foundation. Speaking is just. It's the beautiful result of the system you've already built.
Which brings us to a really crucial point. It can't just be any input. You can't just turn on a TV show in another language and expect to learn.
Right. It can't just be noise. It has to be in what we could call the Goldilocks zone.
Not too hot, not too cold.
Exactly. And the term for this is comprehensible input.
Comprehensible, meaning understandable. So we're talking about English that you can mostly understand.
Yeah.
Why is mostly the key word there? Why not 100%?
Because if you understand 100% of it, your brain isn't learning anything new. It's just reviewing. Think of a weightlifter.
Okay.
If you only ever lift a weightlifter, you can already handle with zero effort. Your muscles don't grow. It's the same for your brain. If the input is too easy, your brain just says, yep, know this, and it checks out. There's no challenge.
And that leads to boredom.
It does. And on the other end, if the input is too hard, say you only understand 10%,
You're just lost. It feels overwhelming.
your brain can't find enough connection points to follow the meaning. It just sounds like noise, and it's frustrating.
So the sweet spot, the optimal range, is where you understand, what, about 70 or 80%?
That's the zone. It's sometimes called I+1, where I is your current level and the +1 is that little bit of new information. You can follow the main story, you get the gist of the conversation, even if there are a few new words or a grammar structure you don't recognize.
And that's where the magic happens. Those new words, those are the +1 that your brain can work on.
Because you have all the surrounding context to help you figure it out, your brain is engaged in a little bit of detective work, and that's what creates the new neural connections.
So how does a learner find that sweet spot? It's not like you can run a percentage test on a movie.
No, it's more of a feeling. It requires a bit of self-awareness. For reading, things like graded readers are fantastic. They're books written specifically for learners at certain levels.
So the vocabulary and grammar are controlled.
Exactly. For listening, it means finding podcasts or shows for learners, and it means accepting that you will miss words. The test is, can you still tell someone the basic plot or the main idea afterwards? If you can, you're in the zone.
That acceptance of imperfection is huge. I think a lot of learners, myself included, will stop a podcast the second we miss a word because we think we failed.
When in reality, that moment of missing one word but understanding everything around it is exactly where the learning is happening.
And this is the part that feels like magic. The book claims that if you just get enough of this comprehensible input, your grammar improves automatically.
It does, subconsciously. You're not trying to learn grammar. You're trying to understand a story. But the grammar comes along for the ride.
How does that work? What's the mechanism?
The brain is a pattern recognition machine. That's what it does best. When it's exposed to language over and over, it starts to notice things that repeat.
Patterns.
For instance, you hear, I'm tired, I'm hungry, I'm late, I'm ready, thousands of times. You never sit down and study the rule for the verb to be.
No.
Your brain just registers that the sound I'm always comes before a state of being. It sees the pattern, logs the data, and builds the rule internally without you ever thinking about it.
So the input approach is descriptive. You see how it works in the wild, and the rule builds itself inside you. The old way is prescriptive. Here's the rule. Now go try to use it.
You've got it. That's the fundamental shift. And adults can absolutely learn this way, We just have to get out of our own way and stop thinking that learning has to be painful or difficult to be effective.
And to really drive this home, the book gives this perfect, specific example of how context teaches you a new word without any translation at all.
The example of the exhausted man. It's beautiful because it's so simple and clear.
Let's walk through it. Imagine you're watching a video. No sound at first. You just see a man coming home from work.
He's not angry or sad, he just looks heavy. Like every movement is an effort.
Right. He sighs as he takes off his shoes. He slumps onto the sofa, doesn't even bother to turn on the lights. He just closes his eyes and rubs his temples. The visual information is overwhelming.
The man is completely drained, depleted.
And right at that moment, you hear a sentence very clearly. He was exhausted after work.
Now, let's say you've never heard the word exhausted before. You don't need a dictionary. You don't need a translator.
No, because your brain is already connecting the dots. It sees the visual evidence of extreme tiredness.
And then maybe the narrator adds another clue, like he didn't even eat dinner, he went straight to bed.
So now your brain has 3 pieces of data. The man's body language, the action of going to bed early, and this new sound, exhausted.
And it makes the connection. Exhausted must mean very, very tired. And that learning is so much deeper than just memorizing a definition.
Because you've connected it to a feeling, a story, an image, it's holistic.
Exactly. That's how real, lasting learning happens. It's meaning made through context inside that comprehensible zone.
Okay, so we've established that input is the food, and the quality of that food matters. It has to be comprehensible.
Right.
The next logical question is about the feeding schedule. It's not just what you eat, but how often and how much.
Which brings us to the next key concept, frequency.
And the idea here is quantity and consistency over intensity.
Yes, the source material is very clear on this. Input has to be frequent. The adult brain forgets things very, very quickly.
So that one big language class you take on a Saturday morning.
It's not nearly as effective as you think, because in the 6 days between classes, those new neural pathways you built start to fade. The brain needs constant reminders that this language is important.
We fall into that trap, don't we? We think a 4-hour marathon session must be better because it feels harder. It feels like more work.
But it's actually inefficient. Because of the memory decay rate, you spend the first hour of your next class just relearning what you forgot from the last one.
You're just treading water.
In a way, yes. That's why the authors champion the power of daily listening and reading. Even just 10 or 15 minutes a day is described as incredibly powerful.
More powerful than 4 hours once a week.
Significantly more powerful for long-term retention. Because that short daily session keeps the system active. It stops the pathways from decaying. It tells your brain, hey, this English thing, we're still doing this. Keep it online.
So practically speaking, what does that look like? How does someone fit that into a busy schedule?
It's about integration. You find small pockets of time, you listen to a podcast for learners while you're commuting, you read one chapter of a graded reader while you drink your morning coffee, you change the language on your phone to English.
Small habits?
Tiny, consistent habits. The goal is to make sure your brain hears or sees English every single day. Consistency beats intensity every time.
And it's not just the consistency, it's the sheer volume. The book talks about needing a massive amount of English.
A huge amount. And again, not necessarily difficult English, a high volume of understandable English. If you want to build a skyscraper, you need a mountain of bricks and steel. It's the same for language. You need that massive quantity of input to see all the different patterns, the idioms, the exceptions, enough times for them to stick.
Okay, but here's a problem I've definitely faced. I'm doing the work, I'm listening every day, but I don't feel like I'm getting anywhere. I feel stuck, bored even.
The plateau.
Yes, that feeling of quiet progress or no progress at all.
That is the moment where so many learners give up because they confuse their day-to-day performance with their underlying learning.
What's the difference?
The reassurance from the book here is huge. It says that even when you feel bored or tired or like you're not improving, progress is happening. It's happening quietly, under the surface. Your brain is silently organizing all that data you've been feeding it. It's like a computer running a complex update in the background. You don't see it, but it's working.
So we have to trust the invisible work.
We do. And that trust pays off with what we can call the aha moment.
What's that?
The aha moment is when, out of nowhere, a perfect, complex sentence just comes out of your mouth without you even thinking about it.
Or you suddenly realize that you just understood a whole 5 minutes of a TV show without even trying.
Exactly. And in that moment, it feels like magic. It feels like it happened instantly. A sudden gift.
But the authors are clear. It didn't come from nowhere.
Not at all. That aha moment, that sudden leap, is the direct result of all those hours of quiet, seemingly unproductive listening and reading. It's the culmination of all that silent work.
Like filling a reservoir, drop by drop.
That's a perfect analogy. You don't notice each individual drop, but they're all accumulating. And then one day, the reservoir is full and it overflows. That overflow is the aha moment. The system had been quietly integrating data until it finally reached a tipping point.
And understanding that, it changes everything. It means we have to get rid of what the book calls the machine model myth.
The machine model. This is the belief that learning is linear. It's mechanical. You'll learn Rule A, you master Rule A, you move on to Rule B.
It's like assembling a piece of furniture from instructions. Step 1, step 2, step 3.
And it's appealing because it feels orderly and controllable.
Yeah.
If the machine breaks, it's because you didn't follow an instruction correctly.
But our brains aren't machines.
Not even close. Instead, the book proposes an organic model. Language grows inside you like a living thing, like a plant.
A plant, okay.
You can't force a plant to grow faster. You can't yell at it to produce leaves tomorrow. You can't control every little step of how its roots spread.
All you can do is create the right conditions.
Exactly. You provide good soil and water. That's the comprehensible input. You provide consistent sunlight. That's the daily frequency. And then you have to trust the process. It will grow in its own time, in its own way, and it won't always be neat and tidy.
And this is where we get the idea of the internal system.
This is the organized but unconscious language system inside your brain. It's always changing, always adapting. And you can't consciously control it. You can't just reach in and decide to fix a grammar mistake.
So it updates itself based on the input it receives.
Only based on that.
Yeah.
And it's not just copying and pasting sentences. When you give it input, your brain is actively building its own version of English.
Its own unique version.
Yes. Researchers call it an interlanguage. It's not your native language, and it's not perfect target English. It's a unique transitional system in between. It is your English.
And recognizing that is incredibly liberating, because it means your English today isn't permanent.
Right. It's dynamic. It's evolving. And even when you make mistakes, which we're about to get to, it's a sign that your system is alive. It's working. It's testing hypotheses. It's trying to figure things out. A mistake is a sign of growth, not a sign of failure.
All right, now we need to talk about the hardest part of learning a language, emotionally speaking.
The obstacles.
The obstacles, specifically mistakes. We all know that feeling, that hot flash of shame when you say something and you just know it was wrong.
It makes you want to just stop talking forever.
Exactly. And that fear, that shame, it's probably the biggest single thing that holds learners back.
It is. But the insight from Speed and Lightbound here can completely reframe that feeling. They argue that mistakes are not random. They're not just careless failures.
They're what?
They're systematic. They follow a pattern, and they happen for a reason. They are a direct reflection of your internal system trying to apply logic based on the data it has so far.
So instead of a mistake being proof that I'm bad at this,
it's a diagnostic tool. It's a little window into how your internal system is currently wired. It shows you exactly what stage of development you're in.
let's use the classic example from the book. A learner who says he go to work every day.
A very common, predictable error. The third person S is missing.
Right. Now, the traditional machine model view would say, wrong. You failed to apply the rule. Go do more drills.
But if we look at it through the organic model, that sentence tells us so many positive things.
Like what?
Well, it proves the learner knows the vocabulary. He, go, work. They know the correct word order. Subject, verb, object. They're communicating a clear meaning, a daily routine. The system is 90% functional.
The only thing missing is that one little S.
And its absence isn't random. It's systematic. The internal system has learned a powerful, mostly correct rule for English. Verbs don't change much in the present tense. I go, you go, we go, they go.
So it overgeneralizes that rule. It applies it everywhere.
Which is a sign of an intelligent system trying to be efficient. It has found a dominant pattern and is applying it. It just hasn't received enough input yet to build the exception for he, she, and it. The mistake is a logical step in the developmental process.
So later on, after hearing he goes, she works, it rains hundreds or thousands more times.
The system updates. The weight of the new data forces a change. But it's not because the learner was bad before and is good now. It's just a natural evolution of their internal system.
This connects back to what you said earlier. Rules explain the language, but it's the input that builds the language.
Exactly. You can know the East rule by heart, but if your internal system hasn't absorbed the pattern through massive input, you'll still forget it when you're speaking quickly. The conscious rule and the automatic system are two different things.
So this brings us to the actual role of speaking. If it's not for practice, what is it for?
The book defines speaking as the act of testing the internal system.
A diagnostic test.
Precisely. When you speak, you're running your current program to see how it works. Sometimes it works fine, sometimes there's a bug.
And when there's a bug, you notice it, or someone corrects you.
And that creates a little bit of cognitive dissonance. Your brain notes the mismatch between what you produced and what the correct version is. And it flags that part of the system for a future update.
But the update isn't instant.
Far from it. That's a key point. The system is slow to change. It needs a lot of repeated evidence before it will overwrite an established pattern. That's why learners can make the same mistake for months or even years.
And that's normal.
Completely normal. It's not a sign that you're a bad learner. It's a sign that your brain is being careful, that it needs a lot of convincing data before it rewrites its own code.
But what about correction? Don't we need a teacher to correct every mistake to stop it from becoming a permanent habit? The idea of fossilization?
That's a huge fear for learners. But the book argues that constant correction can actually be counterproductive. It raises anxiety, which makes it harder to speak, which means you test your system less often.
It creates a cycle of fear.
Exactly. The truth is, correction helps a little. It points out the error. But what truly fixes the error is hearing the correct version many, many times.
So input is more powerful than correction.
Dramatically more powerful. Correction is like a bug report. Input is the software patch. You need the thousands of lines of new code from the input to actually fix the problem.
That is a massive weight off the shoulders. It means that if your English feels messy and unstable, it's not broken.
It's becoming. It's a system in the middle of a very complex construction project. The mess is a sign of progress.
Which leads us to the final and maybe most important obstacle, the silent period.
This one is so important for adult learners because it goes against everything we're told.
We're told we have to speak from day one. If you're quiet, you're not participating, you're not learning.
And the book shows us that this is profoundly wrong. Silence is not failure. Silence is a natural, necessary, and incredibly productive stage of learning.
Let's go back to the core rule.
Understanding comes before speaking.
You cannot pour from an empty cup.
And you can't ask your brain to produce language that it hasn't had time to fully process and organize yet. The brain needs time to just absorb.
And that's the silent period?
Yes. In this stage, a learner might understand a huge amount, but they say very little. And they aren't being passive. They are being intensely active mentally. They're listening, observing, connecting meaning to context, building that internal map of the language.
Look at children.
The perfect example. Children have a silent period that can last for a year or even longer. They just listen to the world around them. And does any parent worry?
No, of course not. We just assume they're learning.
But as adults, we put this insane pressure on ourselves. I've been studying for a month. Why can't I have a debate? We expect immediate performance.
And what is that silence actually doing for the brain?
It's managing cognitive load. Speaking is incredible. Okay, number one has to be trust input. It is the food, it is the foundation. Prioritize listening and reading things you can mostly understand. That 70–80% sweet spot.
And do it every day. Feed your brain consistently.
Exactly. Consistency over intensity. Number two, trust the process. Your language system is a living thing, a plant, not a machine. It's going to be messy. Mistakes are not failures. They're just signposts showing you where your system is on its developmental journey.
And number three,
trust time. Silence is not wasted time. It's deep learning time. It's your brain doing the crucial work of absorption before it can handle production. Give yourself permission to be quiet.
the big overarching message here seems to be one of reassurance, that your language, even if it feels broken or unstable right now, it's not.
It's not broken. It's becoming. It's growing according to its own natural timeline. All you have to do is keep giving it the right food.
And that brings us to our final provocative thought for today. We've established that the brain builds its own version of English, your interlanguage, based on the patterns it notices in the input.
Right. It's a synthesis of everything you feed it.
So if that's true, then it's not just the amount of input that matters. It's the quality and, maybe even more importantly, the variety.
Yes. The diet.
Exactly. If you only ever eat one type of food, you'll end up with nutritional deficiencies. If you only ever listen to, say, formal news broadcasts.
Your internal system will be very good at understanding formal news broadcasts, but it will be unprepared for a casual conversation or a joke or an emotional story.
So the final question we want to leave you with is this. What are you feeding your brain? Is it a rich, diverse diet of different accents, different topics, formal and informal language, stories, and conversations?
Or is your language diet restrictive? The choices you make about what you read and listen to are directly shaping the future of your English. The system is always learning. Your job is to make sure you're giving it the best, most varied ingredients to build with.
Keep listening, keep reading, and keep exploring. Until next time, keep feeding the system. We'll see you for the next deep dive.